Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're stepping back into history, to December 2021, to a moment of, well, profound significance in Europe. The applause echoed for what seemed like forever, really. A standing ovation that just wouldn't end, as a leader unlike any other took her final bow. For 16 remarkable years, Angela Merkel stood at the helm of Germany, guiding it, and you could argue much of Europe, through some of its most tumultuous and defining challenges. You've asked us to unpack the incredible journey of this quiet scientist, and it's a truly fascinating question. How did a woman born and raised behind the Iron Curtain in East Germany, under the watchful eye of a communist regime, become not just the leader of her reunified nation, but what many eventually called the Chancellor of the Free World? What were the critical moments, the subtle decisions, the deeply personal experiences that forged her into the figure she became? This deep dive is about understanding not just what she did, but who she was, and how her unique background profoundly shaped her approach to leadership on the world stage.
What's truly captivating about Angela Merkel's story is the sheer, almost improbable arc of her life. I mean, just imagine transitioning from a childhood spent within a surveillance state, a place where every word and action could be scrutinized, to ultimately ascending to the pinnacle of global power. It's an extraordinary testament to a particular kind of resilience and an exceptionally strategic mind. We're going to delve into the specific moments and the often subtle decisions that meticulously forged her political identity. We'll look at how her early experiences, so profoundly different from those of many of her Western counterparts, influenced her distinctive approach to leadership. An approach characterized by, well, profound patience, calculated caution, deep pragmatism, and an almost scientific understanding of complex systems.
Okay, let's unpack this journey then, going right back to the beginning. Her childhood, nestled behind the Iron Curtain in East Germany. She was born Angela Dorothea Kasner in Hamburg, West Germany, in 1954. But here's the twist. Just 3 months later, her family made a decision that would fundamentally alter the entire fabric of her early life. They moved to the German Democratic Republic, the GDR, East Germany. This wasn't just a simple change of address. It was a profound immersion into a world, well, diametrically opposed to the one she was born into.
Indeed. That move was absolutely defining for her future. Her father, Horst Kasner, was a Lutheran pastor, and her mother, Herland, was a teacher of English and Latin. Their decision was driven by her father's calling to a pastorate, first in Quetzau and then in the small town of Templin, about 90 kilometers north of East Berlin. So this positioned her firmly within the GDR, a country vastly different in its political, social, and economic structures from West Germany. Imagine that contrast. Born into a free, democratic society, only to be raised almost immediately within the confines of a staunchly atheist communist state. This duality, it really shaped her entire worldview from a very tender age, forcing an early understanding of how to navigate these conflicting realities.
Right. A Protestant pastor's daughter in the atheist communist GDR. That must have been an incredibly unique and I can only imagine often challenging upbringing. It really begs the question. How did that particular environment, that constant negotiation between her family's deep-seated religious values and the state's pervasive ideology, how did that shape her character as a child and young woman? What skills or insights did it instill?
That environment was, without question, a crucible for her character. It forged traits that would define her leadership later on. As a pastor's daughter in the GDR, she occupied a rather paradoxical space, you see. It demanded both overt conformity to the state's expectations and a private adherence to her family's faith. This fostered a profound sense of discipline, an exceptional capacity for quiet observation, and a deeply ingrained pragmatism. She was known among her peers by the nickname Kasi. Now, while she did join the Free German Youth, the FDJ, that's the official communist youth movement, in 1968, it's crucial to understand that membership was less an ideological statement and more a practical necessity. If you wanted higher education or professional career within the system, well, it was pretty much a prerequisite. However, there's a subtle but significant choice she made that speaks volumes about her quiet determination amidst this pervasive secular ideology. Despite the pressure to conform, she chose to be confirmed in her Lutheran faith. She didn't participate in the secular Jugendweihe ceremony, which was the common thing in East Germany. This youth dedication wasn't just a rite of passage. It was a state-sponsored indoctrination into communist ideology, a direct alternative to religious confirmation.
So that was a statement in itself, really.
A quiet but powerful statement, exactly. A statement of personal conviction against the state's pervasive atheism, yet one that didn't overtly challenge authority or provoke conflict. It showcased her early ability to maintain integrity without inviting unnecessary confrontation. That's a skill she would refine over decades, wouldn't she?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So navigating that dual reality, the official communist system and her deeply religious, independent-minded family background must have been an ongoing exercise in careful maneuvering. I can only imagine how that would have honed some truly crucial skills for later in life. A constant lesson in strategic living and quiet resilience, perhaps.
Definitely. This constant navigation of two distinct realities undoubtedly cultivated a remarkable set of intellectual and social skills. Academically, she excelled. She learned Russian fluently, a very practical skill given the geopolitics at the time, and earned prizes for it alongside mathematics. She completed her Abitur, the German high school diploma, with a perfect 1.0 grade, the highest possible score. That shows exceptional intellectual rigor and meticulous attention to detail. But beyond academics, the daily need for caution and discretion, the pervasive understanding of surveillance inherent in a state like the GDR, that deeply shaped her. There's a revealing anecdote from this period. She recounted a moment when she was offered an assistant professorship, a desirable position, but it came with a hidden string attached. She would need to report to the Stasi, the state's feared secret police.
Right, the Stasi.
She declined. And her reason? Quite clever, really. She cited pragmatically an inability to keep secrets effectively enough to be an asset. It wasn't just a simple no, it was a masterclass in subtle defiance within a totalitarian system. It taught her the immense power of indirect refusal, of finding plausible, non-confrontational ways to maintain integrity, a skill she would later deploy on the international stage, dealing with leaders like, say, Vladimir Putin, where direct confrontation was often less effective than quiet, persistent maneuvering. It's this formative period that cultivated her legendary patience, her calculated caution, and her unwavering pragmatism, all traits that would define her political style as chancellor. As she once put it, reflecting on life in the GDR, sometimes it was almost comfortable in a certain way because there were some things one simply couldn't influence. A very pragmatic, almost detached observation about adapting to a controlled environment.
From brilliant student, excelling in physics and languages, to quantum chemist, it really sounds like a completely different path, doesn't it? A highly specialized scientific career, miles away from the rough and tumble world of politics. So what exactly was her sliding doors moment, that pivotal event that propelled her, seemingly out of nowhere, into the political arena?
That pivotal moment, without a shadow of a doubt, was the fall of the Berlin Wall in November 1989. For someone like Merkel, who had dedicated years to working as a research scientist, got her doctorate in quantum chemistry in '86.
Yeah.
This was not just a news event. It was a seismic shift that completely reshaped her reality and opened up an entirely new, unforeseen path. Her transition from a physicist, immersed in the rigorous logic, empirical evidence, predictable systems of science, to a political outsider stepping into a world that was chaotic, highly emotional, and at that time, very male-dominated. It was truly significant. It required a complete reorientation of her skills and mindset, from the precise, controlled environment of a lab to the unpredictable, often irrational nature of public life. She was essentially starting from scratch in a completely new domain.
That's an incredible leap. It makes you wonder, for someone so used to the logic of science, how disorienting was that initial plunge into the unpredictable world of politics? Did she ever express doubts or second thoughts about leaving the lab? And how did she even begin? What was her very first concrete step?
It must have been profoundly disorienting, yes. While Merkel is famously reticent about her inner emotional life, her actions speak to a rapid adaptation, almost an empirical approach to a new system, you could say. Her first concrete step into politics was remarkably swift and strategic. She joined a new political party called Democratic Beginning, or DA, in December 1989, just a month after the wall fell.
That fast. Wow.
Yes, her aptitude for communication and her calm demeanor were quickly recognized, and she became their press spokeswoman in February 1990. This early foray, though, wasn't without its immediate baptism by fire. The leader of the DA, Wolfgang Schnurr, was soon exposed as a Stasi informant.
Oh no, that must have been difficult.
A potentially catastrophic scandal for a new democratic movement, especially when trust was paramount. Yet, Merkel handled the intense media scrutiny around this revelation with such unexpected poise, composure, and competence that Lothar de Maizière, who was leading the last pre-unification East German government, was deeply impressed. He appointed her as his deputy spokeswoman. This showed her immediate ability to navigate crisis and maintain a steady hand under pressure, even with absolutely zero prior political experience. It was like a rapid, accidental vetting process that she passed with flying colors.
That's an astonishingly rapid ascent for someone with literally no prior political experience.
Yeah.
Moving from a party press spokeswoman to a deputy government role in just months.
So what happened after the monumental event of German reunification in October 1990? How did her political career continue its unexpected path? What role did she play in the newly unified Germany? Well, following reunification in 1990, the Democratic Beginning Party, where she started, merged with the East German Christian Democratic Union, the CDU, which then, in turn, merged with its much larger and established Western counterpart, also the CDU. This basically gave her a direct pathway into the national political landscape. Merkel was successfully elected to the Bundestag, the German federal parliament, representing a constituency in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern.
Okay.
And what's even more striking is how quickly she gained recognition and trust within the established political structures. Almost immediately after entering parliament, Chancellor Helmut Kohl,
A giant figure.
absolutely a towering figure in German politics, he appointed her as Minister for Women and Youth in 1991. This was a clear sign of her rapid rise and Kohl's early patronage. He clearly recognized her intellect and potential. She would then go on to be re-elected from her home constituency of Stralsund-Nordvorpommern-Rügen in every single election until she retired in 2021. That's a remarkable testament to her local support and resilience, deeply rooted in her East German origins.
And she then moved to an even more visible and impactful role, becoming Minister for the Environment and Nuclear Safety in 1994. This position definitely brought her greater public visibility and put her squarely on a national and even international stage. What did this role mean for her burgeoning political career?
Yes, that move significantly amplified her profile and really cemented her position as a rising star. As a protege of Kohl, and at that time his youngest cabinet minister, she was affectionately, or maybe sometimes a bit patronizingly, referred to by him as my girl, mein Mädchen.
Right, I remember that nickname.
This period was absolutely crucial for her development as a policymaker. In this highly visible role, her scientific background found a direct application. She played a key part in the 1995 Berlin Climate Change Conference. This conference was actually quite significant. It secured the very first international commitment to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, a foundational step in global climate policy.
So she was involved right at the start of that.
She was. Her involvement showcased her unique ability to blend scientific understanding with political negotiation on an international stage. This period, from quantum physicist to influential minister, truly laid the essential groundwork for her national recognition. And it allowed her to strategically build her personal political career under the watchful and at times guiding mentorship of Helmut Kohl. It was during these years, actually, that she first hired Beat Broman, who would remain her close advisor throughout her entire chancellorship. That shows her early strategic thinking about building a loyal, dependable team.
Okay, so she's established herself firmly in Kohl's cabinet. She's earned the nickname Kohl's Girl, and she's clearly on an upward path. But how did she transition from that role to not just leading, but fundamentally reshaping the entire CDU party? Because here's where it gets really interesting. It wasn't just a step up. It was a strategic takeover, a display of quiet ruthlessness, wouldn't you say?
You're absolutely right. The transition was far from a simple promotion. It was a masterful display of political acumen and, yes, quiet strength. After the CDU suffered a significant defeat in the 1998 federal election, their worst result since 1949, actually, and Germany got its first post-war left-wing government. While the party was in profound disarray, this was then compounded by a massive party funding scandal that engulfed many leading figures, including Kohl himself and his handpicked successor as CDU leader, Wolfgang Schäuble.
Right, the funding scandal. That was huge.
Huge. And it was in this moment of existential crisis for the party that Merkel, then serving as Secretary General, made her audacious and incredibly calculated move. She published an opinion piece in a major newspaper, the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, on December 22, 1999. In it, she publicly criticized her former mentor, Helmut Kohl, and boldly advocated for a fresh start for the party, explicitly stating it needed to move forward without him.
Wow, that took guts. Criticizing Kohl publicly like that.
Extraordinary guts. It was a strategic display of quiet strength, as you put it, a dismantling of rivals, including her once powerful patron, right there in plain sight. It proved her willingness to be ruthless for the sake of the party's future, and by extension, her own. It was a carefully timed, decisive blow that cleared the path for her own leadership at a moment when, frankly, no one else had the courage or perhaps the foresight to act.
And this led directly to her becoming the first female leader of the CDU in 2000, and then later the first female leader of the opposition. That's a truly huge barrier broken in what was, let's face it, a traditionally male-dominated and socially conservative party. And it's even more remarkable given her background coming from a Protestant background in northern Germany, rather than the CDU's traditional Catholic strongholds in the more conservative South. It signaled a profound shift, didn't it?
Her election was, without exaggeration, a significant surprise to many observers and a clear break with the CDU's established norms. Her personality and background offered such a stark contrast to the party's prevailing image. She was a centrist Protestant from the predominantly Protestant North, leading a party with deep Catholic roots and strongholds in the more conservative West and South. That alone was a major shift, indicating the party's desperate need for renewal after the scandal.
The path to the chancellorship wasn't immediate, right?
No, not at all. The path was still not straightforward. In the run-up to the 2002 election, despite her leadership, her personal popularity lagged behind that of the more established and, let's say, traditionally charismatic CSU leader, Edmund Stoiber from Bavaria. So, in a highly consequential private negotiation, now famously known as the Wolfratshausen Breakfast,
The breakfast meeting, yes.
a clandestine meeting between Merkel and Stoiber at his home in Bavaria, Merkel made another deeply strategic concession. She agreed to let Stoiber be the candidate for chancellor. In return, though, she secured a crucial promise. She would become the leader of the combined CDU-CSU faction in the Bundestag, effectively securing her future role as leader of the opposition after the election, which they expected to lose, actually.
So she played the long game again.
Exactly. This wasn't a defeat, it was the long game. It demonstrated her extraordinary patience and willingness to bide her time for the ultimate prize, positioning herself for the next inevitable opportunity rather than forcing an unfavorable fight. She understood that sometimes a strategic retreat is the quickest path forward.
By 2005, she finally secured the CDU-CSU nomination for chancellor, having proven her strategic patience and political skill. Yet even then, polls showed her personal popularity still lagging behind the incumbent, Gerhard Schröder. But she somehow managed to form a grand coalition after a very close and uncertain election. How did she pull that off, and what characterized the start of her unprecedented 16-year tenure?
That 2005 election was incredibly tight. I mean, razor thin. It ended in a near stalemate where both Schroeder and Merkel initially claimed victory, a truly nail-biting finish. The CDU-CSU won 35.2% of the vote to the SPD's 34.2%, but crucially, neither side nor their preferred coalition partners secured enough seats for a governing majority.
So gridlock, basically.
Pretty much. This necessitated 3 weeks of intense, often tense negotiations between the two largest parties to form what they call a grand coalition. Despite trailing Schroeder in personal popularity and having faced some criticism during her campaign, for example, famously confusing gross and net income in a TV debate and struggling with the unpopular flat tax proposals of her chosen finance minister nominee, Paul Kirchhoff-Merkel ultimately emerged as chancellor. This marked the beginning of her 16-year chancellorship, a period unprecedented for a woman in German politics.
And the moody nickname started around then.
Not quite yet, actually. The nickname Mutti, the familiar form of mother, emerged later in her tenure. It came to symbolize a public perception of her as this maternal, pragmatic, dependable figure, the steady hand guiding the nation. Yet, as we saw with how she handled Kohl, this maternal image could mask a very strategic and, when necessary, ruthless political operator. Her strategy throughout was characterized by a consistent, steady approach. Often underestimated, but consistently highly effective in consolidating power and navigating Germany's complex political landscapes, and indeed, Europe's. Her stated main aim for this first government was explicitly to reduce unemployment. That was the promise she insisted her government would be judged on. She also oversaw healthcare reforms in 2006, which introduced a kind of health insurance duty to ensure everyone was insured, and prioritized preventive healthcare, laying the groundwork for a more robust social safety net.
Angela Merkel's chancellorship was truly defined by a series of monumental crises, wasn't it? She didn't just manage them, she often shaped the entire European and even global response. So what were the major challenges that really forged her reputation and transformed her into the figure we know today, the Iron Chancellor, the Chancellor of the Free World?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, her leadership through the 2008 global financial crisis and the subsequent Eurozone crisis truly cemented her role, in many eyes, as Europe's reluctant savior. It started with a moment of, perhaps, hesitation. After initially criticizing Ireland's drastic move to guarantee all private savings, a move that flew in the face of market orthodoxy, she swiftly reversed course. Germany followed suit, eventually guaranteeing deposits itself.
Showing that pragmatism again.
Exactly. Pragmatism over rigid ideology very early on. Her government also had to step in with a significant bailout for the mortgage company Hypo Real Estate, a clear indication of the severe economic pressures Germany faced. It showed her willingness to act decisively when the situation demanded it.
And during the Greek debt crisis that followed, Germany, as Europe's economic powerhouse, became the largest creditor to the Greek government. That naturally gave Merkel immense leverage over the negotiations, didn't it?
It did. Immense leverage. This led to her often being credited with saving the euro itself.
But it also brought significant criticism for the austerity measures imposed.
That's absolutely right. Her firm stance and Germany's economic weight were instrumental in shaping the debt relief policies and the, well, often controversial austerity measures that were applied to debtor nations like Greece, Ireland, and Portugal. While many credit her for stabilizing the Eurozone, and indeed many economists argue that without Germany's commitment, the single currency might well have fractured in practice. It also brought significant criticism. The austerity measures Germany insisted on were seen by some observers, particularly in southern Europe, as overly harsh, triggering widespread social and economic hardship. Critics also highlighted Germany's own history with debt management, questioning the moral authority of imposing such strict conditions. However, on the domestic front, her government's expansion of the Kurzarbeit program, that's the short-time work scheme.
Ah, yes, the job support program.
Exactly. It provided job support during the financial crisis by allowing companies to reduce working hours instead of laying off staff. That was widely praised. This program, extending the permitted duration, is credited with saving an estimated 500,000 jobs during the crisis. It demonstrated a pragmatic and effective response to protect the German workforce.
Then, just a few years later, came the 2015 European migrant crisis, and her famous, now iconic, phrase, "Wir schaffen das," we can do this. That became a defining moment of her chancellorship, symbolizing both immense hope and, well, profound controversy. What were the specific actions she took, and what was the fallout?
This crisis truly raises an important question about leadership under immense pressure and the role of moral conviction in foreign policy. In late August 2015, at the height of the crisis, her government controversially suspended the Dublin regulation.
Explain that again quickly.
Sure. It's the EU law that stipulated asylum seekers must apply in the first EU country they enter. By suspending it, Germany effectively opened its borders to a massive influx, allowing it to process asylum applications from Syrian refugees regardless of where they first arrived in the EU. That year alone, Germany took in nearly 1.1 million asylum seekers. This act of humanity was indeed praised by many, who saw it as a powerful moral statement from Germany, perhaps echoing its post-war commitment to human rights.
But the backlash was intense.
Intense and immediate, both domestically and across Europe. Within Germany, the decision profoundly polarized society and politics. It contributed directly to the meteoric rise of the far-right Alternative for Germany Party, the AfD, which capitalized on anti-immigration sentiment and fear. Her own coalition partner, the Bavarian CSU, led by Horst Seehofer, openly criticized what he called the state of mind without rules that he felt this decision created.
And internationally.
Internationally, while she received accolades like the UN Nansen Award for her courage and compassion, some European leaders accused Germany of acting unilaterally and straining solidarity within the EU. It led to a scramble among other nations to manage their own borders. Merkel eventually tightened asylum policy for security reasons after the Paris attacks later that year, balancing humanitarian concerns with national security. But the initial Wir schaffen das moment remains indelible. Her diplomatic visits to places like Mali and Niger in October 2016 illustrated her later efforts to address the root causes of migration and reduce illegal flows, showing a more comprehensive, albeit perhaps delayed, approach.
Beyond Europe, she was often seen as a crucial global anchor, wasn't she?
Yeah.
A steady hand dealing with often unpredictable figures like Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. She even at times seemed to fill a void as the leader of the free world after the Obama administration. That's a heavy mantle for any single leader.
Her role as a global anchor was indeed pronounced, particularly as the geopolitical landscape shifted dramatically. She consistently emphasized international cooperation, both within the EU and NATO, as fundamental to global stability. She also pursued a Russian reset and championed change through trade. Wandel Dirch-Handel policies, believing that economic engagement could foster stability and reform, particularly with Russia.
Which has come under fire recently.
Intensely so, yes, especially after the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine. For example, back in 2008, she actively blocked Ukraine and Georgia's NATO accession, a decision she later defended by stating the war would have broken out earlier if they had joined, and Ukraine would have been at a greater military disadvantage.
Controversial in hindsight.
Highly controversial. She also pushed for the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, despite U.S. sanctions and increasing geopolitical tensions. A decision driven by what she saw as Germany's energy security needs, but one that retrospectively appears to have deepened dependence on Russia.
And her relationship with Trump.
Against Donald Trump, her interactions were often described as tense, but, well, professionally pragmatic. She openly criticized the American withdrawal from the Paris Agreement, positioning Germany and herself as a bulwark for multilateralism and climate action. After Trump's election, she was famously described by the New York Times as the liberal West's last defender, a testament to her steadfast commitment to the democratic values and international cooperation in an increasingly turbulent world. There's also that interesting detail about her fear of dogs, stemming from an attack back in 1995.
Oh, yes, I remember hearing about that.
Which Vladimir Putin seemingly exploited by bringing his Labrador retriever into a press conference in 2007. Merkel later interpreted this as Putin's attempt to prove he's a man and mask his own weakness. A fascinating insight into her psychological analysis of other leaders.
And then, as her chancellorship neared its end, the COVID-19 pandemic saw the scientist in her truly come to the fore, didn't it? Her background seemed to give her a unique credibility and authority in guiding the nation through that unprecedented public health crisis.
It absolutely did. Her scientific background was widely lauded during the pandemic. It gave her a distinctive authority that few other political leaders possessed. She approached the crisis with the analytical rigor of a physicist. She recommended an approach characterized by moderation and avoidance of extreme measures. Mas and Miti in the early phases, emphasizing data and evidence over political expediency. In March 2020, she gave a powerful and widely publicized speech to the German nation, directly addressing citizens and comparing the pandemic's challenges to those of World War II, a statement that resonated deeply and earned her the Speech of the Year award in Germany.
And she explained the R number, didn't she?
Famously, yes. She provided a clear and accessible explanation of the basic reproduction number, the R number, for the public. It became a crucial metric in Germany's pandemic response, demonstrating her ability to distill complex scientific concepts for the public in calm, reassuring manner. Furthermore, she spearheaded the next-generation EU reconstruction package, an unprecedented shove of financial solidarity within the EU, committing €750 billion to rebuild after the economic impact of the pandemic.
A big shift for Germany.
A significant shift from Germany's traditional reluctance to issue common EU debt, yes, demonstrating her leadership and forging a unified European response. However, her post-chancellorship has also seen intensified scrutiny of her Russia policy and the downsizing of the Bundeswehr, particularly after the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. Some critics, including Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, have even retrospectively blamed her 2008 decision to block Ukraine's NATO membership for contributing to the conflict and Germany's subsequent energy dependence on Russia. It's forcing a reevaluation of some of her long-held strategic assumptions.
Beyond the intricate dance of policies and the relentless pressure of crises, there's the enduring image of Merkel herself, a leader known for her remarkable restraint, her striking lack of personal drama, and an almost singular focus on discipline and duty. What do we truly know about the woman behind the public persona, the one often dubbed the Iron Chancellor?
The woman behind the Iron Chancellor was characterized by an almost unparalleled discretion in her personal life. She maintained a clear, almost impenetrable boundary between her public duties and private existence. We know she was first married to physics student Ulrich Merkel from 1977 to 1982. She kept his surname, which would become globally recognized. She later married quantum chemist and Professor Joachim Sauer in 1998, a figure who famously and steadfastly shied away from media attention throughout her entire political career. He rarely appeared by her side for anything but the most essential state functions, preferring his academic anonymity.
He really stayed out of the limelight.
Completely. She has no biological children of her own, but 2 stepsons from Sauer's previous marriage. Beyond her family, we know she's a fluent Russian speaker, a skill honed during her East German upbringing. It allowed her to converse informally with Vladimir Putin, though official diplomatic exchanges still used interpreters. And perhaps a more humanizing detail, she's a fervent football fan. known to listen to games even during Bundestag sessions and often attending national team matches, including Germany's glorious 2014 World Cup final victory in Brazil.
Right. And of course, there's the famous Merkel route, that distinctive hand gesture where her fingertips meet to form a diamond shape. It became almost a political meme, a symbol of her. What about the comparisons often drawn between her and other iconic female leaders, particularly Margaret Thatcher? Were those comparisons accurate, or did they miss something?
The Merkel route, yes. It became her subtle, recognizable trademark. A gesture that conveyed calm, control, and consistency, often deliberately adopted in her public appearances. Many in the English language press frequently compared her to Margaret Thatcher, often dubbing her Iron Lady, Iron Girl, or even the Iron Frau. These comparisons stemmed partly from their shared scientific backgrounds. Thatcher also held a chemistry degree in their conservative-leaning political policies, though of course Merkel's style was markedly different.
How so?
Well, critics like Al Jazeera were quick to point out the flaws in this analogy. They noted Merkel's strong pro-European stance and her collaborative, consensus-driven approach, especially during the Eurozone crisis. That distinguished her significantly from Thatcher's more confrontational my way or the highway attitude. Domestically, she was more often called Mutti, but also at times Iron Chancellor, a nod to Otto von Bismarck. It reflects a dual public perception, both a nurturing, unifying figure and a formidable, resolute leader. Interestingly, after largely evading the question for most of her career, often saying she believed in equality but avoided labels, she publicly declared herself a feminist in 2021. A significant, albeit late, stance that further shaped her legacy for women in power.
Her public image certainly evolved significantly over her 16 years. Forbes named her the world's most powerful woman a record 14 times. Time magazine named her Person of the Year in 2015, famously calling her the Chancellor of the Free World. After Donald Trump's election, she was even described by the New York Times as the liberal West's last defender. An immense weight of expectation placed upon her. But for all the accolades, she also faced significant criticism, didn't she?
Oh, absolutely. Her consistent recognition by Forbes for over a decade and Time's declaration in 2015 truly highlights her extraordinary global stature and the immense trust placed in her leadership during turbulent times. This international perception intensified further after 2016, with some commentators, including Hillary Clinton, describing her as the actual leader of the free world, a testament to his steadfast commitment to democratic values and international cooperation. Her impact on the younger generation in Germany is also notable. Those who grew up entirely under her chancellorship are sometimes referred to as the Merkelkinder, the children of Merkel, suggesting her deep imprint on a generation's political consciousness and a sense of stable continuity.
But the criticism.
Yes, her tenure was not without its share of criticism and moments of public misstep. She faced public outcry for attending an awards ceremony for Danish cartoonist Kurt Westergaard, who had triggered the Muhammad cartoons controversy. A decision seen by some as insensitive given ongoing debates about Muslim immigration. This was around the time Philo Sarazen's controversial book critical of Muslim integration came out, even as Merkel herself condemned a planned burning of Qur'ans by a pastor in Florida. It was a complex time.
The alternative los.
Yes, alternative los, meaning without an alternative. Her frequent use of that term to describe her Eurozone crisis measures was famously named the Unword of the Year in 2010 by linguistic scholars. They criticized it as undemocratic for stifling debate, presenting complex policy decisions as inevitable. That term is even widely credited with inspiring the name of the political party, Alternative for Germany, AfD, born partly out of opposition to her Eurozone policies.
Right. And the internet comment.
She also made headlines and became the subject of quite a bit of online mockery for her comment. The internet is uncharted territory for us all. Das Internet ist für uns alle Neuland, during a joint press conference with President Obama in 2013. It was widely perceived as somewhat out of touch with the rapidly evolving digital age. Furthermore, her comment in 2015 that Islam is part of Germany drew significant criticism from within her own party, with some arguing that while Muslims belong, Islam itself as a cultural system does not. These instances show that even the most pragmatic leader can stumble in the court of public opinion.
And finally, her profound legacy for women in politics, particularly her demonstration of power without spectacle, seems undeniable. What do you see as the enduring impact she leaves for women in leadership and beyond? And how might history ultimately judge her unique brand of statesmanship?
Her enduring legacy for women in power is significant precisely because it challenged conventional notions of what leadership looks like. She embodied a form of power that wasn't about grand gestures or charismatic speeches or personal drama. It was about steady, pragmatic governance, meticulous problem solving, and a quiet, persistent strength. She was the longest-serving incumbent head of government in the EU, achieved the highest ranking for a woman by Forbes as the world's most powerful, multiple times.
So a different model of leadership.
Exactly. This quiet, methodical approach demonstrated that effective leadership does not require conforming to traditionally masculine or flamboyant styles. She proved that competence, resilience, and a deep sense of duty can be more powerful than any spectacle. She subtly shifted perceptions of female leadership globally simply by being herself, really. Now, while her chancellorship became tightly associated with the Wandel-Dirtchandel policy advocating close economic ties with authoritarian governments to induce democratization.
Which, as we said, is under scrutiny now.
Under intense scrutiny post-Ukraine invasion, yes, for potentially fueling autocratic regimes and creating dangerous dependencies. Despite that, her ability to lead Germany and Europe for so long, navigating immense challenges without ever resorting to personal theatrics, stands as a truly significant and inspiring legacy. Her dedication to factual analysis, her cautious approach, her unwavering focus on consensus building defined an era. History's ultimate judgment on her specific policies, particularly her approach to Russia, will continue to be debated and reevaluated, no doubt. But her personal integrity and her unique style of quiet power will undoubtedly endure.
So as we return to that soundscape of her farewell, with the unexpected, almost punk rock choice of Nina Hagen's Du hast den Farbfilm vergessen, playing a song ironically chosen by the German military, reflecting perhaps a touch of human, unexpected rebellion from the Iron Chancellor herself, we're left with a powerful image. An image of a leader who consistently defied simple categorization.
It really raises an important question for you, the listener, to ponder. After 16 years navigating financial meltdowns, unprecedented refugee crises, global power shifts, and a pandemic, was Angela Merkel ultimately Europe's cautious caretaker, simply managing the status quo with her renowned pragmatism and avoiding greater disruptions? Or was she, in her quiet, methodical, and often underestimated way, its hidden architect, subtly reshaping the continent's political and economic landscape for decades to come, leaving a blueprint whose full implications we are only now beginning to understand? Her forthcoming memoir, Freedom, Memories 1954-2021, set for release in November 2024, will undoubtedly offer her own nuanced perspective on this enduring and complex question.
What stands out to you from Angela Merkel's incredible journey and the quiet power she wielded? We invite you to continue pondering her legacy. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.